Well, it had to happen. I'm Joe Chirosian, and this is RamView. Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Chirosian, and this is RamView, the December 15th, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident, need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair, having some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. All right. Well, it happened. The guillotine dropped. And it's a new beginning for the Chargers after the darkest of endings, right? I don't know if anyone saw anything worse than what took place last night. I was watching it on delay. I had work I had to get done, so I was watching it on delay. I was about 2 hours, hour and a half behind, and my phone's lighting up, and I'm getting messages thinking that people are asking, does Staley get kiffined in Vegas? And, I'm going to have to do one of these shows sometimes where we use different words and stuff. I don't want to be all esoteric and everything, but when we talk about kiffined, I think most people know that when you get kiffined, you're not just fired, but you're fired on the tarmac, right? And I think the Spanos has allowed Brandon Staley to go home. So first thoughts, watching the Raiders drop a 60 burger. A 60 burger on the Chargers, 63-21 was just bugged me, is Las Vegas couldn't get just one score. They couldn't provide one sixer against Minnesota last week. They lost 3-0. And it's just killing me. They're putting points here, they're putting points there, and they can't put one bucket, one six spot on the Vikings. It kills me. Do you realize that this is such a crunched space in the NFC? That it might come down to the fact that the Vikings have one more win than the Rams. And the reason they have that win is because the Raiders couldn't get one touchdown. Hey, get the touchdown, miss the extra point. I don't care. Just get the touchdown. So it was frustrating. That part was frustrating me. I like Aiden O'Connell. I didn't like him in college. I didn't like it when the Rams were bringing him in for interviews. But now I kind of get it. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I get why he's liked. And I think he looks like a guy that was in college for 6 years. And there's something to be said about these guys that are coming out. They got that extra COVID year that are really taking advantage of it. They've had a lot of snaps. They've had to read a lot of defenses. And they might be marginal talents from, from the neck down, but from the head up, they're ready to play football. But I do say this to Raider fans, heed the words of the wolf. Heed the words of the wolf and know what the wolf says. And the wolf says, let's not get too excited just yet, okay? Let's keep our focus because you only beat the currently unemployed Brandon Staley and the Chargers, all right? That's all you beat, okay? So you shouldn't get too worked up. Last ad, Raiders. Unless it's Jim Harbaugh or an absolutely proven commodity, and I'd stay away from Belichick. Unless I got someone coming through that I'm absolutely certain of, I just stick with Antonio Pierce. I think what this club needs, they just need some stability. I think they just need a couple of 8-9, 9-8 seasons, and get your GM stuff straight, get some good draft picks in there. And just be a solid competitive team. And then when the timing is right, make your move, maybe for a more dynamic coach. But I think I'd stick with Antonio Pierce right now. I know he hasn't beaten anybody, but they beat the Giants. He's won 3 games. They beat the Giants and they beat the Chargers with Brandon Staley. So, but I think I would. They want to play for him. build up some momentum. He has attitude. He has Raider attitude. Maybe you need to stick with him. I think they should have done this with Rich Biaggi. I always have trouble pronouncing his name. He was just a special teams coach. But after that Gruden disaster, and I think the Gruden disaster wasn't the emails. The Gruden disaster was just John Gruden, right? He was just John Gruden and Mike Mayock. That was the real disaster there. That's the lingering disaster when you look at their draft picks. But they should have kept Rich Biaggi. They should have. Bisacci, that's it, Bisacci. They should have kept him and, done that 8-9, 9-8 routine for a few years to settle things down. And, I think they need that. The Raiders, to me, are an easier buy in Vegas. I want them to do well. Okay, let's talk about the Chargers real quick here. Chargers, Brandon Staley, we get it, right? We all get it. He should have been fired after the Minnesota game this year. Everyone knows it, right? Not only did you have the disaster in Jacksonville, but you had that Minnesota game, let alone other instances. He had to go. Sorry, he had to go. But it did happen. It did surprise me that it happened to Tom Telesco. I thought Telesco was a good GM, and maybe he was being punished for being too loyal to Brandon Staley, his hire. There is good talent there with the Chargers. That's why it's so frustrating, right? If you're a Charger fan or you're just a football fan, you can't understand why they're not better. But they blew Telesco out of the room, and that one, like I said, did surprise me. But in the end, as Staley rides off into the night and Telesco gets another gig, the problem with the Chargers remains. And the problem for the Chargers is the Spanos family. The NFL needs to have some mechanism in place where an owner or the people owning stock in the company can somehow fire the owner himself, because the Spanos have been a disaster, with the exception of a few blips here and there. Since the Spanos family took over for Gene Klein in 1984, this is their 40th season. Their 40th season heading up the Chargers, right? The Chargers in 40 years have only been in double-digit wins 8 times. 8 times. In Sean McVay's first 6 years with the Rams have double-digit wins 4 times. As an organization, even in the dark years in St. Louis, at the height of the Georgia reign of terror, you only have to go back to 1999 to get to 8 double-digit wins for this Rams franchise, and that includes 12 consecutive losing seasons from 2005 through 2016. And think over the span of the 40 years that the Spanos have only had 8 double-digit win seasons. They got Dan Fouts at the end of his run. And then you could skip the 90s. You don't have to go through the John Freeze. You could Stan Humphries, got him to a Super Bowl. But, when you start looking at what they've had this century, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, and Justin Herbert, all those guys by 2035 will likely be in Canton, right? And only 8 times did they ever have double-digit wins. They've only been to the playoffs 11 times in the 40 years. They've had 12 head coaches, luminaries such as Anthony Lynn, Mike McCoy, Norv Turner, Mike Riley, June Jones, Kevin Gilbride, Dan Henning, Al Saunders. They had 3 hits. One was Don Coryell, who they inherited. They got Boss Ross, Bobby Ross. He had 5 seasons, 3 playoffs appearances, 1 Super Bowl, and they fired him. Yeah, they fired Bobby Ross. And then you had Marty Schottenheimer for 5 seasons. Schottenheimer had to do a rebuild after Mike Riley. And in his last 3 years with the Chargers, Marty Schottenheimer went 35-13, 2 playoff appearances, went 14-2 in 2006, and he still got fired. What's the problem with the Bolts? The problem with the Bolts is they've got the Spanoses. And the Spanoses, to me, have turned everybody off. They left their base to a smaller base thinking they didn't want to pay rent or they didn't want to build their new stadium. The Spanoses are the problem, but the NFL, they won't recognize that. They'll go after somebody who doesn't agree with them or someone who doesn't fall in line and try to really run somebody out of the league. But they just let the Spanoses just continue to go on in mediocrity. I have never met, they say they're out there, but I've never met a diehard, go crazy Charger fan, right? Maybe in San Diego, but I have never met one of those people because all their hopes for 40 years, right? Let alone the Gene Klein era and the heartbreak and the disappointment and all that. But yeah, the problem's the same. The problem's the same. You know, the Chargers could bring in a Jim Harbaugh, and Harbaugh could turn the whole thing around. But in 3 or 4 years, the Spanish are going to screw it up and run them out of the building, right? It's just what they do. And so there's your problem for anybody that's a Bolt fan. It's them. Giff Smith, old linebacker coach, he was named the interim, which I think really surprised a lot of people in the sense that everyone thought Kellen Moore. But think about this. Kellen Moore was the hot OC in Dallas. Dallas is better this year without him. Kellen Moore comes to LA for the Bolts, and he's not even named interim. Maybe, Kellen Moore, got more of a boost than he should have. JoJo Wooden has been named temporary GM. A lot of experience with the club. 2013, he came there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him because, again, the roster's not bad, and that's why everyone's ticked off. All right, let's get to some Ram stuff. I just wanted to get the rest of it out there. I promise, guys, I will get to the question. Tim Burns, Bill, I will get to those questions here. Ram stuff. So we've been going back and forth on this. What's it going to cost to re-sign Kevin Dotson? And there was PFF put out a market price for him. I was talking about how Austin Corbett 2 years ago, who was not near as good as Kevin Dotson, he got a 3-year, 26 rock deal, I think, with Carolina, and that obviously the Rams didn't match that for Austin Corbett, but Kevin Dotson now, a couple of years, 3 years later, is going to be in obviously the 10 to 12 market, and that was very low estimation on my part. PFF is speculating his market price, 4 years, 69 rocks. That's 17 rocks per year for your right guard. That's something to think about, right? Something to think about. The Rams have a lot of money. We know that, Joe Noteboom, I think it's because of the money they owe him. He's going to be around next year, so he's a big payday. You got Havenstein, who's getting older now, right? We're seeing a lot of little things coming up with Havenstein. Groin, calf. He's not out for a bigger payday with the Rams. He won't get another payday from the Rams. And then Alaric Jackson, I don't think you have to worry about paying him anytime soon, and you don't have to worry about paying Avila soon. And I think Coleman Shelton is not a long-term guy. So if the Rams are going to do it, they'll do it. That'll be really interesting to see. But 17 rocks a year for your right guard. It's not my money, so spend it. But when you think of salary cap and everything going down the road, right, that could come back and bite you. So if you give him a 4-year deal in 2024, that means he's your right guard, hopefully through 2027. That's a whole other span. In 4 years, literally, is a window opening again and a window closing again, right? By the time 2027 comes around, we're going to be talking about another year of pain, right? So something to think about with Kevin Dotson. I'm curious to see this week Nick Hampton or Ochaun Mathis. I want to see who gets the snaps. Ochaun Mathis has not played since the Cardinal game, and Nick Hampton, as I said, looked more comfortable on the field against Baltimore. So that'll be interesting. And this Redskins game or this TaxSkin game has I'm going to get mine. It's a game where you can get fat or eat, right? And I'm hopefully those guys will get some time on the field, because the third thing I wanted to get into before we get into the playoff picture is snaps are my concern this week. Starting Sunday, these are the 5 biggest days of the Rams season. These will be 5 days that make or break the Rams season. And snaps are a concern. With the Saints game looming on Thursday, short week, the last thing the Rams need is a win that's tight and a win that's heavily contested, right? A win that goes down to a Luke Havrasek field goal attempt, right? With a ball snapped by Carson Tinker, right? What the Rams need is they really need a blowout. They need a blowout. You don't want this team accruing a high snap count when New Orleans is going to be tough. New Orleans, if they beat the Giants this week, they're still in contention for the NFC South crown. That is so they're going to be playing hard. They haven't been playing well, and I think the Rams should beat them. But you don't want a tired Ram team. You don't want an exhausted Ram team. You don't want a banged up Ram team. You want a Ram team that basically they put away early, demoralize the TaxSkins. I could see the Texans coming out with some energy, get punched in the nose and saying, yeah, we suck this year. Everyone's going to be losing their job. Let's just move on and get to the draft picks and free agency. I want to see a game where McVay gets the starters out by the third quarter, and by the start of the fourth, Carson Wentz is handing the ball off to Zach Evans, right? That would be glorious. And something to keep in mind, you can't move past the TaxSkins, but you do have a short week. And so these 5 days are going to be the most critical for the Rams this year. NFC playoff picture, Cowboys, Lions, 49ers, Buccaneers right now at 6-7. And then you got the Eagles, the same record as the Cowboys. Spots 6 and 7 belong to Minnesota and Green Bay. Minnesota 7-6, right? Thanks, Raiders. Couldn't get a touchdown. Couldn't get a touchdown last week, right? Couldn't get a touchdown. Not one against the Vikings. And then the Packers. Packers are playing the Bucks. Bucks right now lead the NFC North, the NFC South. And if Baker Mayfield could give us a big thank you for, hey, man, thanks for bringing me in last December, giving me a shot to rejuvenate my career, to get another, 7 or 8 rock deal from the Tampa Bay, and to keep myself relevant in the NFL as a guy that can start. Maybe Baker Mayfield will do us a favor and beat the Green Bay Packers for us on Sunday. That would be wonderful. I think Seattle's going to lose to Philly. Falcons, Panthers, that's a game that's all relevant. The Falcons are 6-7. But they're going to beat the Panthers. Saints playing the Giants, and that's the whole Tommy DeVito story. And you got Tommy DeVito. I kind of hoping the Saints will tell Tommy to go home and get his shine box, but we don't know. We don't know right now. And DeVito didn't look bad the other night. Then you got Bears, Browns. Rooting for the Browns here. I think the Browns again are a better team going as we're heading into January, December. I think they'll beat the Bears, and of course the Rams will put away the TaxSkins. Quarterbacks that you want to match up here. You got Drew Lock against Jalen Hurts. You got Tommy DeVito against Derek Carr. You got Baker Mayfield against Jordan Love. And you got Jake Browning going against Nick Mullins, who's got the start for the Vikings this year. You want the Browning rifle from Cincinnati to do us a favor there. Maybe Zach Taylor can do us a favor and say, hey, thanks, Sean McVay. Thanks for giving me a shot in the NFL. Thanks for head starting my career so I can coach a quarterback like Joe Burrow. Hey, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to beat Nick Mullins and the Vikings. That would be really cool. Okay, around the NFL and other places, time for some redefinition on what a game manager is, right? Time for a redefinition on that. To me, Gary Kubiak was a game manager. Chase Daniel, as he made his 41 rocks as a backup, is a game manager. The throws Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, and I'm not even a Dak Prescott fan, and the throws that Brock Purdy have made this year prove they are something much more than game managers. They have made big-time throws. They make plays. A game manager is incapable of making plays. A game manager should be, this whole thing should be rethought. John Wolford is a game manager, right? Don Strock was a guy that made throws, but he was a career backup, but he made throws. Brett Rippon, at his best, is hoping to be a game manager, but Carson Wentz is a guy that's a backup quarterback now that has made throws and made plays, lots of them. And so I think it's just the semantics, the language that we're talking about with game manager. Game manager is not supposed to throw interceptions, but Matthew Stafford led the NFL with 17 interceptions in 2021, and everyone tried to make a big deal out of it, but he won a Super Bowl. You know why? Because he's aggressive and because you've got receivers that tip the ball in the air or don't fight for the ball. That's why Van Jefferson's out of town. For some reason, PFF and these other places, we've got the real ERA. Can we get a real interception total in all of our analytic counts? Because if Stafford throws 17 interceptions, maybe 13 are legit, maybe 12 are legit. The other, you got to look at a missed route run by a receiver, a tipped ball. but a game manager is not supposed to throw interceptions. But Rams won a Super Bowl with a guy that led the league in throwing interception. Also, the idea that a game changer is based on what you can do with your legs. It seems like everybody's a game. Tom Brady is a game changer. He did nothing with his legs, except he was really good sneaking the ball on a quarterback sneak. It's about what you do with your brain. And the perfect example of this to me is Lamar Jackson. And I think he's being dismissed far too quickly. I say it that if in the positive way, it's not a pejorative, it's a positive to say, he's a game manager in the sense that he makes choices now. He's really making really good choices. I don't think he's got an elite arm, but he's making choices where he's letting the play out in front of him, is keeping his eyes downfield, fewer designed runs, and running when he has to. And that's how he really hurt the Rams. It wasn't his designed runs. It was those get out of the pockets. You know who he reminds me of? And I know this is going to be really weird. It's going to be a weird comparison, but he strikes me as a talented Joe Cap in the sense that he's going to do what needs to be done, right? Cap didn't have an elite arm. Definitely Lamar Jackson has a far better arm than Joe Cap did. But in terms of just putting ball placement and putting it where it needs to be, Lamar Jackson's not elite in that area. But he has, of course, the game-changing athleticism, but he manages the game great. When you watch him, that's what got me thinking about that. So it's all semantics right now. There's a whole lower level for what a game manager is. And I don't even think Lamar Jackson, or not Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott or any of these guys or Jared Goff. If you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, you're not going to be just somebody who hands the ball off and just throws little screens left and right? You got to go downfield. You got to make big time throws. And a lot of those guys are doing it. So that's from my point of view there. Let's keep going here. I mentioned the Cleveland Browns in the last episode as my dark horse team. They're 8-5. That is the sneakiest 8-5 team there is. And they should beat the Bears this week, which means they'll go to 9-5. And then they've got the Houston Texans. Now, CJ Stroud, right now, it's unlikely. He has not been cleared to play this week. Sometimes those concussions, unfortunately, can linger. And then he's going to be being off for 2 weeks. That game could be a toss-up between the Browns and Texans. And then they get the Jets. So at worst, they could go 2-3 over the next 3 weeks, and the Browns could be 10-6 going into Cincy in Week 18 against the Browning Rifle. Who would have thunk it? Myles Garrett is looking better than he did against the Rams, and an offensive line, especially an interior offensive line, where Joe Flacco doesn't have to deal with stuff up the middle, gives him time to fling the ball. And to me, the Browns are a dark horse team that I personally wouldn't want to play unless I had Matthew Stafford as my quarterback, just throwing it out there. And then finally, before we go to break, as the NFL continues to pat itself on the back for being so socially aware, it drives me crazy. I look at what we did. We got an all women's team, or we got an all black officiating crew, and great. I'm glad. Whatever. Are they the best ones out there? Then let's dance. Let's go. But do we have to always pat ourselves on the back? And I'm so sick of hearing the NFL talk about how they're so socially aware, because they're so socially aware that they're blinded in understanding that some of the greatest injustices are being done and have been done in the name of social justice. All of those Marxist guys, the 20th century, were bringing a social justice to the elites, right? And they were rising up the proletariat. It didn't end too well, right? And so be careful you throw that word around. We're all for justice, but be careful you throw around social justice, NFL. You're kind of grossing me out. Okay, I'm Joe Tarosian, and I was a sports writer for 21 years. I still am. And thank you guys so much for all of you for clicking on RamView, and for the new subscribers. If you can, keep checking us out over there at Spotify. That really helps us. And I get to do RamView now because of our sponsors like at Kistler Law and Temple City Auto Repair. If you could check them out. As also, go on Amazon, and you'll see several of my books on Amazon. Just type in joetarosian.com. This is my first novel. It was a high school football novel called Tangent Dreams. I did very well. I have some nice reviews there. There's another high school football novel on there too called Temple City Company of the Ages. Then I wrote some dystopian Christian novels and Sin Virus. You can check that out there. The books, the sports show allow me to do my day job. I pastor a small church in Burbank Faith Nazarene, which you can find right here on YouTube at Burbank Faith Virtual. And I'm not against. I've had a few people knowing what my day job is ask me some theology questions. I'm not going to talk about it here, but if you want to, you're free to contact me. It's okay. You're not going to make me mad or anything like that. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this. All right, let's look at some questions here. Bill, if Morris gets a head coaching job, do you think Staley gets the Rams defensive coordinator job? Can I just say, that's always been our thought, and that would have been my thought. I really want Raheem to get a job, because if Raheem gets a job, that's 2 third-round picks for the Rams. But the truth is, I don't know if I want Brandon Staley. He looks like damaged goods, right? Doesn't he look like damaged goods? I mean, he is a defensive coach. And if we remember, a couple weeks ago, he got real snarky with the press when he said, I'm calling the defense. I'm calling the defensive sets and the defensive plays, so we don't need to ask that question anymore. Remember how snarky he was when he brought that up? So I don't know if I want him back. I think he's going to have to go back and climb the ladder. There's no shortage of assistants that want to work for Sean McVay. I think we've heard that several times. He seems to keep replacing the ones that go off and leave. And his coaching tree is getting pretty impressive. So do you want him back, Bill? Do you want him back? I know he did a great job for us in 2020, but I don't know. I think he's damaged goods. I think he needs to take I think he needs to climb back up the ladder and find himself again. Tim Burns, I am watching the 99 Super Bowl season. Who do you think was a more complete team, Warner's or Stafford's team? So many on 99 had elite moments and were only average career-wise, like Winstrom and Bly. The defense, you had London Fletcher. You had Kevin Carter that was at the peak of his career on defense there. You had, I think Keith Lyle was still around. Legendary, everyone, a pause of appreciation for Mike Jones. It was a solid defense. I don't know if it was a great defense. There was no Aaron Donald on that defense. But the offense to me was better. It's by far better. All those guys were home run hitters. The top 3 guys, Oz Akeem, Holt, Bruce, they were all home run hitters. And then you bring in a Ricky Prohl and all home run hitters. There wasn't a real big time tight end. You had I'm forgetting his name right now. Roland Jones, Roland Williams. He was an okay tight end. And then you had a Hall of Fame running back. I like Kyren Williams, right? But you got a Hall of Fame running back in Marshall Faulk, and that's why it was the greatest show on turf. And there was something about Warner. I'm not trying to pick and choose between liking Warner and disliking Stafford, liking Stafford and disliking Warner. But Warner got the ball out of his hands so fast. And then, of course, you had Orlando Pace at left tackle. And the one thing I remember about that season, too, was Curse with Tennessee absolutely beat the snot out of Fred Miller in the regular season game. And then in the Super Bowl game, in Super Bowl 34, Fred Miller did a great job. It was a Javon Curse, the freak, remember? And did a great job shutting him down. I think in terms of completeness, I think the greatest show on turf team was more complete than this year's team. Tim Burns, another old school question. What's your take on the old rumor / legend of Georgia? I was told that Carol Rosenblum kind of changed his will an awful lot. And it was convenient that when his will was changed at this point, that only Georgia got everything. Let's just say from our end as a Ram fan where I lived, it smelled really bad when Steve Rosenblum got canned. It just seemed, it just didn't seem, something seemed wrong. And then, of course, they diminished Don Klosterman, who should be in the Hall of Fame. And that's my take on that. Steeler fan Rob, who's your starting quarterback this week? Steeler fan Rob, is it Terry Hanratty, Cliff Stout? Who you running? Mark Malone? Who is it? Is it? I'm curious. Neil O'Donnell, who's your quarterback? Go Vikings. No, we're going to root for Cincy here, and then go Bears. No, we're going to root for the Browns. I think you're in trouble, man. I think you're in trouble there in Steelerland. Okay, coming across. Thanks for that, guys. It's always fun to answer questions. If you have more, I'll look at them at the end of the show. 4 times this season, the Rams. This is for you, Bill. 4 times this season, the Rams are going to play a team coming off a bye. And I did not know this was the Rams have lost 6 in a row to teams coming off byes under Sean McVay. That's something to keep an eye on. I think that breaks this week. Alex Ward is on the IR. Who's Alex Ward? Alex Ward's been our long snapper this year, and you never heard his name because he's done a solid job. And again, this is what I'm concerned about is I don't want Sunday coming down to Luke Haversick and Carson Tinker, right? Having to make a kick in the final moments to secure this game. So Carson Tinker, that's like the most vulnerable spot on the team. You don't want to lose your long snapper. Now, Tinker is a veteran, and I'm hoping it's all going to work out, but just something to keep an eye on. Rob Havenstein, growing injury, day-to-day. McVay said his game-time decision. Tutu Atwell has not been cleared. He's still in protocol. Quentin Lake is scheduled to return, and Tyler Higbee with the neck. The expectation is for him to see the field. Brian Robinson is the only real big name for the TaxSkins that I saw that was really being ruled out for Sunday's game. All time, of course, we've talked about this. TaxSkins lead the Rams 24-12-1. In playoffs, they're 2-2. I did want to say that actually there was something that I did find that would be good for us to talk about briefly here. Is on December 17th, 1950. No, I'm sorry. My bad. It was December 16th, 1945. The Rams won the NFL championship. Now, they're playing the Washington team on this December 17th, this Sunday. But tomorrow, Saturday, this December 16th, will be the 78th anniversary of the Rams' first NFL championship. They beat the Washington Redskins 15-14 in Cleveland. Bob Waterfield was the quarterback of that team. Thought that was something to keep in mind there going forward. All right. Again, I do not see the Rams losing this game. Taxkins have had no pass rush. They had no pass rush with Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Stafford should light them up. And defensively, the only thing I will say is that the Rams just need to be honest and play defense honestly. Respect Sam Howell because he has the ability and the talent at wide receiver to sting you. Now, he's been sacked 1,000 times this year or 2,000 times, 2,300 times. And so the Rams should be able to get to him. And that's where I'm kind of curious. I want to see, can Oshwan Mathis, can Nick Hampton get some serious snaps here? And so we can just see what they look like in NFL games that count, right? And I'll go back to it. A blowout would be great. Limit the snaps heading into a critical Thursday night game against the Saints. I don't want the Rams thinking about the Saints, but they need to finish business with Taxkins, and I think they will. They're too young to know what they don't know, and so I think the loss, even though we might have been upset as Ram fans, the loss to the Ravens did probably boost morale. It probably did. It was probably less devastating as was eye-opening to say, hey, we can play with these guys, and we've really got a chance to make some noise, maybe not just at the end of December, but maybe into January past the first week. So I'm taking the Rams 34-10. I'm going to say McVay has them ready to go, and they come out and take care of business, and that's the ideal, right? Let's take care of business. Let's make it 34-3 by the end, late in the third quarter, and everyone starts getting pulled. Everyone starts getting pulled. Okay, let's look at this week's schedule. Chargers, Raiders. I did take the Raiders. Raiders won 63-21. And Vikings, Bengals. I'm going with the Bengals. Steelers, Colts. I don't know. Is it Hanratty or is it Stout? Who's starting at quarterback, Steeler fan Rob? Who's starting? Oh, is Mason Rudolph really starting? Really? Wow, Mason with your nose so bright, huh? Okay. Yeah, Mason Rudolph is starting, so that changes absolutely nothing on Saturday. So I'm going with the Colts at home. Broncos-Lions should be a good game. I think the Lions have to have this one, and I think they'll get it. I think it'll be feels like a shootout, doesn't it? Falcons-Panthers, going with Falcons, of course. Bears-Browns. Browns are my dark horse team, and I'm going to go with them over the Bears. Buccaneers-Packers. It's at Lambeau, so I'm going to go with the Packers, but I'm rooting for the Bucks. Dolphins, Jets. It would be fun to see a meltdown in Miami just because everyone was crowning them early. But I think the Dolphins are going to take that game in Florida, in South Florida. Then you got the Chiefs, Patriots. Another thing, I'm not rooting for – I don't really hate the Chiefs, but I do look forward to an opportunity to talk about the negative effect Taylor Swift has had on the Chiefs. However, I do think they'll beat the Patriots. Giants, Saints, the Saints are going to win. I'm rooting for Tommy DeVito and the Giants, and so we'll see if they can stay alive. Texans, Titans. I loved watching Will Levis and the Titans do that game. If Davis Mills, I thought David Mills was a competent quarterback. I've argued that the Rams should have made a deal for him as a backup in the offseason. But he hasn't played that much, and Titans got to be feeling really confident after going into Miami. And so the Texans are a little bit banged up beyond Stroud. Will Anderson got banged up last week. Nico Collins at receiver got banged up. I'm going to go with the Titans at home. I'm changing my bet here. It's not a bet, my pick. I was going to take the Texans by going Titans. Cardinals, 49ers. That's in Arizona. We're going with 49ers, Steve Spurrier to Gene Washington for 3 touchdowns. TaxSkins-Rams, talked about that one. Cowboys-Bills, real interesting game. I think if it was in Dallas, I'd go Dallas, but I'm going Buffalo, in Buffalo, and I've heard, I could be wrong, correct me, there's going to be some weather, and that really favors the Bills. See, Viking fans, the Bills still play outdoors, thus they have an extra advantage when teams come north in December. But Viking fans, you and Detroit fans, decided you wanted to host Super Bowls instead of play in Super Bowls, and you gave up that natural advantage that you would have. Sunday night, Ravens, Jaguars. How healthy is Trevor Lawrence? At home, they have to win this one because they're hearing footsteps from Indy, and that would be really disappointing if the Jaguars coughed up this whole 2023 season. So I'm going with the Jaguars. Monday night, Eagles, Seahawks. Yeah, we're going Eagles in that one as Drew Lock gets the start. On our way out of here, last thing I wanted to throw out was Richie Incognito was waived on this day in 2009 by the Rams. Incognito had been a third round, 81st overall pick in 2005 out of Nebraska. He was a brute. Pretty powerful left guard, beat people up, was always getting penalties. But after the Rams waived him, he was claimed by the Bills, bounced to the Dolphins, then went back to Buffalo, played another 10 years in the league, made 4 Pro Bowls. And he had anger issues. They said he was, he was a bully and everything. But let's put that aside. Probably in another age, if this was the 90s or the 80s, he'd be a Conrad Dobler type, right? He'd be someone that would be idolized, and people would have talked to him about here more affectionately. Our culture changed. I'm not saying right or wrong what he did. It was hard to really know when the Rams were in St. Louis. But when you see how bad the Rams were, how many times they whiffed, and I always blow his name, Justin Smith, Jason Smith in 2009. They whiffed on Alex Barron. I know I shouldn't say that name in public. They whiffed on Greg Robinson. Of course, that was later. They whiffed on so many draft picks. In the third round, they nailed it with Richie Incognito. But, of course, he didn't mature enough until after the Rams kind of put him in the street or the Bills claimed him on waivers. But Richie Incognito had a great career. He had a great career. And it was obvious he was a great player because he would have been easy to write off with the bullying aspect, everything that was labeled to him, his rage issues and everything. But he was so talented as a guard that he kept finding work. And he was in this league for 14 seasons. I think he finished up with the Raiders in 2018. Yeah, just something to keep in mind. Okay, I think we're good. It was a stone groove. All right. Are you serious, Sarge? It's going to be Trubisky? You're going to go back and do that one? You're going to go back and Trubisky. You're not feeling too confident, are you? I'm glad you got a new girlfriend because she'll take your mind off your woes. Okay, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for clicking on. Thank you so much for the concerns, my family and everything. We're coming out of it, and things are looking good. Hey, hopefully the Rams will take care of business on Sunday. We can get back together on Monday. And if you have any questions or anything, shoot them my way. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave questions. Don't forget to go to Spotify if you can and help us out there. Bill, Tim, Steeler fan Rob, thanks for clicking on. Anyone else that's out there, God bless. Talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Remember, there's football on Saturday.